well. Picking the right takes, placing them.
Yeah, I don't think it pays to be too neat. You want to leave some traces of us for the intrepid to find.
What do you mean? Any visitor to that island is going to hear quite a lot of us, if they poke around.
Oh yeah, no, sure, but I mean, showing what's happening behind the scenes a little bit to ensure we keep some authenticity. Because if we get too concerned with saying a bunch of wise things in the least personally revealing way, then we're basically putting up a front, in danger of it becoming a false front. It's a slippery slope, and you know how easily we could slide into pomposity. I mean, nobody wants that, but would we notice if it happened? Or are we too close to the project? Look, I just think if we include some of our interactions, show that we aren't these transcendent, perfect beings, that we get stuck sometimes. We get into arguments or get depressed. Then at least it's not a false front. At least we're not hiding.
Authenticity is good, yes, but you can find human drama anywhere. I mean, we're drowning in it from day to day. We're supposed to be building a quiet environment away from drama, not celebrating it. Look, these are objects of contemplation. These are about focus and clarity. We agreed at the outset.
Yeah, I know. And I don't want to change any of that. Just a little added twist, tucked away deep. It doesn't have to be drama, it's just reality.
Reality. So what, we should record a meeting and stick it in?
Maybe. But we already have some good stuff. Oh, like that little encounter the other week where you offered to buy a girl a sandwich?
Oh.
Her mic was running, so it's in the archive. Look, it's fine. In context, it's perfect. Because we're not lecturing from on high. These recordings are part of an endeavor built by human beings. And they aspire to truth with a capital T. But we also have to remember that they cannot actually get there. We should be clear to the intrepid that we know this. I think it'll make it better.
Okay, sure. We'll at least see how it feels. I mean, on that island, we are going to be in very susceptible states. So, be careful with it.
Okay.
It seems I get to be the pioneer of being mildly embarrassed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and also, should probably let you know, I'm recording this conversation right now.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious.
Oh.
What? It will make it better, trust me.
It's just the new teapot beeping. It boils fast, but that beep bothers me. Moving on?
So, next I want to raise this problem, which is that I think we don't have enough smart representation from materialist atheists, physicalists, anything in that neighborhood of ideas. And I've been trying to do something about that, but it's hard. The problem is that most coherent atheists' creeds are focused on defeating some specific idea of God, or are angry about the historical activities of organized religions, rather than, say, from first principles, making a good case for the impossibility of any concept of God, which would be more like what we're after.
I'm having the same problem. So many justifications of atheism devolve into assertions of the implausibility of Bible stories. Someone like Bertrand Russell, a very advanced thinker, but his commentary on religion all seems to be like Why I Am Not a Christian. Very limited in scope. It is way too small compared to the vision of God and the pieces we're juxtaposing.
Can you repeat that last part? You kind of just dropped out a little bit.
Oh, just that it's a very provincial idea of God that's usually advanced in those arguments. Sometimes even a straw man God. And it doesn't have much in common with the God visualized by Cusa or Spinoza or the great Sufis or even Einstein, whoever. So it just doesn't play on the same field.
When people are explicitly pushing materialism, they're usually philosophers or writers, not physicists, not people who actually do the frontline work of understanding the physical world. With the heavy hitters in physics, it's very hard. It's hard to find good statements that aren't just arguing against straw men. And it's strange because in the modern age, a reasonable portion of working physicists are atheists. Not all by any means, but a reasonable portion. But it's hard to get strong and articulate statements from that sector.
Yeah. I mean, the closest you get is somebody like Feynman, where science gives us a great degree of certainty about certain things. But outside those, it's not a good idea to tell ourselves nice stories and speculate. It's just best to realize we don't know yet about the bigger questions, etc. But we have a lot of Feynman already. Paul Dirac was at least a staunch atheist at one point in his life, but I don't know if he has direct statements on record. I'll keep an eye out.
Dirac was far from a materialist, though. He believed the universe is made out of math. That's an oversimplification, of course. He even mentioned God a few times in an Einstein kind of way.
Wow, this is all so crazy because among scientifically educated people, it's the cultural default, right? If you're a scientist or a computer programmer kind of person, atheist materialism is supposed to be the basic belief. If you're not a materialist, you're stupid. But if we can't find anyone who makes a good case for it, how does that happen?
Well, it's easy to be convinced of the absurdity of stories in common Christianity, Judaism, whatever. So if that's your picture of spiritual beliefs and you have an aversion to digging too hard into your own worldview, which most of us do, then there you go. Anything that seems religious is goofy Bible stories, and materialism is anti-religious. And it's the general impression that smart people are materialists, and hey, I want to be smart, so case closed.
Also, there are all these so-called spiritual people who believe basically anything and try to convince everyone.
In addition to goofy Bible stories, did I forget to mention ghost stories, astrologers, spoonbenders, and all kinds of frauds?
It's a ton of noise. It makes it almost impossible for an outsider looking in to see high-quality thought in the world of spirituality. If I can even generalize spirituality to one thing. So it's easy, if you're already leaning toward materialism, to see these flaky spiritual people, extrapolate that to all spiritual people, and say all that stuff is garbage.
That's how it worked for me, for a while.
Okay, but despite all this, there's a large contingent of present-day real scientists who believe in some form of atheist materialism and whose beliefs have been carefully considered. So we need to ensure we respect that viewpoint.
It's
I
so
remember
frustrating.
that. Oh, sorry.
No, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Carl Sagan has a good piece in Demon Haunted World, where he talks about science as a profound source of spirituality. But he doesn't mean mystical spirituality. He means just pure dedication to truth and the development of a wise perspective on our place in the world. It's nice, and it's a picture of atheism that isn't hostile or contemptuous.
Yeah, I read that, and what you're talking about is a beautiful piece, and I tried to get it, but Sagan's people want too much money.
Can't we just pay more?
No. It would trigger a bunch of most favored nation clauses, and we have to pay everyone a lot more, and we go broke. So, no Sagan for us. It is a shame, since he was such a great thinker, and eloquent, too.
Then the occupant of the first would shout to keep him clear. And if the other did not hear the first time, nor even when called 3 times, bad language would inevitably follow. In the first case, there was no anger, and in the second, there was. Because in the first case, the boat was empty, and in the second, it was occupied. And so it is with man. If he could only roam empty through life, who would be able to injure him? Shuangsu, 4th century BC.
So, how did it go?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Wait, what?
No, it's not... It's normal for me. I never remember my dreams. If I try right when I wake up, I can just barely remember fragments. Later in the day, even 20 minutes later, those fragments are gone. Unless I wrote them down. And if I read them later, it's like these are ramblings of a crazy person.
Yeah, but then how do we know there aren't any side effects? I mean, do you remember everything else about your life?
It's fine. I mean, we're just doing suppression, not lobotomies. I mean, everything is still there. In dreams, we often take on personalities that are a little different. We forget details of our waking life and remember fictions in their place. How does that happen? Well, we're just using the same pathways. That's fine. But really, how should I know if something's missing? If you forget a few random little things, how would you remember that you forgot? Nothing big is missing. I don't think. Wait, who are you again?
Oh, God. Why did we let you go first?
First hasn't happened yet. I was just dipping my toes into the pool. Real first happens when someone dives right in and gets to decide for themselves when to come out. Who's that gonna be? You?
I long for the days when we weren't sure we'd be doing anything this scary.
It'll be fine. It's not scary. It'll be fun.
So fun you don't even remember?
Okay, no. Shoo. I want to re-record this one before I go home. I have some new ideas about it.
What? Because of the test?
Yes. Because of the test. Possibly.
I thought you didn't remember anything. Interesting.
Yeah. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Two major schools of Zen exist in Japan, the Rinzai and the Soto. Both have the same goal of seeing the world unmediated, but their approaches are different. In the Soto school, the emphasis is on quiet contemplation in a seated position without a particular focus for thought. The method in the Rinzai school, however, is to put the intellect to work on problems that have no logical resolution. Such problems are known as koans, from the Chinese keng'an, meaning public announcement. Some are mere questions. For example, when your mind is not dwelling on the dualism of good and evil, what is your original face before you were born? Others are set in a question and answer form, like, what is the Buddha? Answer, 3 pounds of flax, or the cypress tree in the courtyard, to name but two of the classic responses. According to tradition, there are 1,700 such conundrums in the Zen repertoire, and their common aim is to induce a kind of intellectual catastrophe, a sudden jump which lifts the individual out of the domain of words and reason into a direct, non-mediated experience known as satori. Zen differs from other meditative forms, including other schools of Buddhism, in that it does not start from where we are and gradually lead us to a clear view of the true way of the world. It is not a progressive system in this respect. The sole purpose of studying Zen is to have Zen experiences, sudden moments, like flashes of lightning, when the intellect is short-circuited and there is no longer a barrier between the experiencer and reality. David Darling,
1996.
Therefore, I thank you, my God, because you make clear to me that there is no other way of approaching you, except that which to all humans, even to the most learned philosophers, seems wholly inaccessible and impossible. For you have shown me that you cannot be seen elsewhere than where impossibility confronts and obstructs me. O Lord, you, who are the food of the mature, have given me courage to do violence to myself, for impossibility coincides with necessity, and I have discovered that the place where you are found unveiled is girded about with the coincidence of contradictories. This is the wall of paradise, and it is there in paradise that you reside. The wall's gate is guarded by the highest spirit of reason, and unless it is overpowered, the way in will not lie open. Thus, it is on the other side of the coincidence of contradictories that you will be able to be seen, and nowhere on this side. If, therefore, impossibility is necessity in your sight, O Lord, there is nothing which your sight does not see. Nicholas of Cusa, 1453.
You see, a motif is this. He put his hands together, drew them apart, the 10 fingers open, then slowly, very slowly, brought them together again, clasped them, squeezed them tightly, meshing them. That's what one should try to achieve. If one hand is held too high or too low, it won't work. Not a single link should be too slack, leaving a hole through which the emotion, the light, the truth can escape. You must understand that I work on the whole canvas, on everything at once. With one impulse, with undivided faith, I approach all the scattered bits and pieces. Everything we see falls apart, vanishes, doesn't it? Nature is always the same, but nothing in her that appears to us lasts. Our art must render the thrill of her permanence along with her elements, the appearance of all her changes. It must give us a taste of her eternity. What is there underneath? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Everything, you understand? So I bring together her wandering hands. I take something at right, something at left, here, there, everywhere. Her tones, her colors, her nuances. I set them down, I bring them together. They form lines, they become objects, rocks, trees, without my planning. They take on volume, value. If these volumes, these values, correspond on my canvas, in my sensibility, to the planes, to the spots which are there before our eyes, then my canvas has brought its hands together. It does not waver. The hands have been joined neither too high nor too low. My canvas is true, compact, full. But if there is the slightest distraction, if I fail just a little bit, above all, if I interpret too much one day, if today I am carried away by a theory which runs counter to that of yesterday, if I think while I paint, if I meddle, whoosh, everything goes to pieces. Paul Cézanne, as related by Joachim Gasquet, 1921. I cannot understand why we idle discussing religion. If we are honest, and scientists have to be, we must admit that religion is a jumble of false assertions with no basis in reality. The very idea of God is a product of the human imagination. It is quite understandable why primitive people, who were so much more exposed to the overpowering forces of nature than we are today, should have personified these forces in fear and trembling. But nowadays, when we understand so many natural processes, we have no need for such solutions. I can't, for the life of me, see how the postulate of an almighty God helps us in any way. What I do see is that this assumption leads to such unproductive questions as to why God allows so much misery and injustice, the exploitation of the poor by the rich, and all the other horrors he might have prevented. If religion is still being taught, it is by no means because its ideas still convince us, but simply because some of us want to keep the lower classes quiet. Quiet people are much easier to govern than clamorous and dissatisfied ones. They are also much easier to exploit. Religion is a kind of opium that allows a nation to lull itself into wishful dreams and so forget the injustices that are being perpetrated against the people. Paul Dirac, 1927, as related by Werner Heisenberg. So, you see what I'm saying here?
Yep, this one doesn't fit either.
How would you characterize the way in which it doesn't fit?
Well, it's about arguing. And it's about being greatly disturbed by issues that are relatively small. It's not aiming high, and it's not about ultimate truth, not really. It's mostly about what some stupid people are doing that is wrong compared to what I am doing that is right.
But Paul Dirac was definitely a truth seeker, in the domain of physics at least.
Yeah, but I don't feel that attitude in this piece at all. If a belief is just formed in opposition to other beliefs, it can't be fundamental? It can't be that deep. But, you know, where he says the thing about natural processes, he starts to outline an actual philosophy.
Interesting. There's something that could stand on its own, that isn't just rejection and opposition. But then he drops it. Oh, this isn't the Atheist Manifesto we need. I'll keep looking.
Okay.
You know, at one point, Dirac also wrote this. One could perhaps describe the situation by saying that God is a mathematician of a very high order, and he used very advanced mathematics in constructing the universe. I think he meant God in an Einstein kind of way.
He said that? Same guy.
Same guy. Later in life, though. People are strange. Scientists are stranger.
Yes, they are.
How many of you here have personally witnessed a total eclipse of the sun? To stand one day in the shadow of the moon is one of my humble goals in life. The closest I ever came was over 30 years ago. On February 26, 1979, a solar eclipse passed directly over the city of Portland. I bought my bus tickets and found a place to stay, but in the end, I couldn't get the time off work. I am the keeper of the Jewel of Masquerade, which lies waiting safe inside me for you for eternity.
Uranium, or you. This stuff's easier to take, isn't it? Understandable. Got people in it. This removes the reassuring crutches of opinion, ideology, and leaves only what is demonstrably true about the world. And the reason why so many people may be thinking about throwing away those crutches. This scientific knowledge is hard to take because it removes the reassuring crutches of opinion, ideology, and leaves only what is demonstrably true about the world. And the reason why so many people are thinking about it is because, thanks to science and technology, they have begun to know that they don't know so much, and that if they are to have more say in what happens. How easy is it for knowledge to spread? And that in the past, the people who made change happen were the people who had that knowledge, whether they were craftsmen or kings. As opposed to this. Know what it is? It's a bunch of amino acids. The stuff that goes to build up a worm, or a geranium, or you. This stuff's easier to take, isn't it? Understandable. This scientific knowledge is hard to take. It moves in reassuring approaches, ideological, and only what you demonstrate. And the reason why is because thanks to science, they have done things that they don't do so much. No, I mean, trying to find ways to translate the knowledge, to teach us to ask the right questions. See, we're on the edge of a